the theory was, and I believe that it came true, was that Antifa and these counter-protesters were going to be dressed as Trump supporters, and they were going to be attempting to cull them from the herd, to separate them from everybody else and hurt them or rob them or beat them or do whatever they're going to do to them.
Willie D. Live.
Did you see any police officers get killed yourself with your own eyes?
Absolutely not. Zero. That's the thing. Forever it was 12 officers died that day or 15 officers died that day. 0 officers died that day. 1 died the next day, Brian Sicknick, and the medical examiner will tell you in his report it says it had 0 to do with January the 6th. And so then they try to say, well, all these officers committed suicide as a result of January 6th. I have yet to see what the evidence was that it was anyway correlated to January the 6th. So I'm not for violence against police officers, but I'm also not for violence against citizens. And I think that, right is right and wrong is wrong, and
what do you think would have happened if you would flip the skin tone, the skin color of the riders? If those were 1,100 black riders, mm-hmm. We know it was a couple of black people there, about 3. But what do you think would have happened if it would have been 1,100 black people storming the Capitol and, swinging on the police and actually penetrating the Capitol walls and windows and doors, going inside, and pissing on would they even had gotten that far?
Right.
What do you think would have happened?
No, I mean that's a valid question because we know that law enforcement can get out of hand. I think I'm familiar with the song called "Crooked Officer." I don't know if somebody wrote that song. I don't know when that was, but I've heard it before. So
right.
But I think that I will say this: 4 protesters died at the Capitol that day as a result of the police action. So I would say that we got it just like anybody else would get it. I can't speculate on what it would be, but I can't say that it would be good. I don't know.
I can tell you what would have happened. Right. If that had been 1,100 black people protesting for their constitutional rights to be upheld by their government, they would have killed every mother out there. It would have been a lot more than 4 people that would have been killed.
Right.
Because let's face it, U.S. cops are a lot more aggressive when it comes to black people not complying.
Right.
And I saw a lot of people not it wasn't even about complying. It was people knocking the police over, walking right by the police, going up the halls, just pretty much just taking over. And some dude, was it Nancy Pelosi's office? The dude took a leak. Was that Nancy Pelosi's
I don't think that actually, but there was a dude that had his feet up on her desk, Big O.
Somebody took a leak somewhere. I can't remember, but they pretty much desecrated it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm like, this, when I saw it, I was like, man, this is wild.
Mm-hmm. Can we agree that the proper number of people that should have died was 0? Either way you frame that question right there,
that is true. But we know that America rules with an iron fist, and it's a violent country, man. Come on, man. Yeah. We got to just keep it real. We got to keep it a buck. We live in a very violent place, and we live in a type of country that we believe more so in punishment than we do, rehabilitation and giving people a chance. Because that's the first thing that comes to our minds when we see somebody commit a transgression or wrong. We go, oh, lock them up. Right. Oh, they need to do 100 years. They need to do 20 years and 50 years. It doesn't matter who it is. We just be like, yo, get them. Right. Punish them. Mm-hmm. We see red automatically, and we don't see the humanity in each other.
That's right.
So that's what I see a lot of times, because I personally don't think that we're going to get there if we don't get there together. Like if we all don't get there, ain't none of us going to get there. You know what I'm saying? Because all of us want to get there, right?
Right.
So everybody's going to fight just as hard to get there as the next guy, right? Mm. So, that's the way I'm looking at it. When all of this stuff went down, at any point did you think about your kids, like your actions, how your actions would affect your kids, or did it not really strike you until you actually ended up convicted and had to do time?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is it wasn't premeditated. So it was like, and people, and this is something that you haven't asked me, but people may be like, how did this guy, why, if you didn't have a plan to do something that day, why would you carry a tomahawk with you, right? And so they had several rallies in D.C. prior to this rally since the election, November 3rd, I believe the election was 2021, or November 3rd, 2020, sorry. And they'd had rallies like November and a couple in December. And at those rallies, people, D.C.'s a dangerous city, chopper city. And then, but people had been stabbed, people had been robbed, people had been jumped. So they told us, whenever you guys are going to D.C., like, be prepared because it's a dangerous city. And they expected Antifa or counter protesters to be trying to separate. The theory was, and I believe that it came true, was that Antifa and these counter protesters were going to be dressed as Trump supporters, and they were going to be attempting to cull them from the herd, to separate them from everybody else and hurt them or rob them or beat them or do whatever they're going to do to them. So a lot of people came with pepper spray or knives, or they, instead of a flag stick, they had an axe handle or whatever it was, And so people were prepared, but what they didn't expect was for the police to be the ones perpetrating the violence. But so, when I think about it was so spur of the moment that after I had been beaten and then that guy told me, like, hey, they're killing people out here. It was, and witnessing, people being beat. It was so spur of the moment. It wasn't like, I intended to go do that, because we went and got coffee and snacks before we even went up there. And it wasn't even, if I was going to go commit an insurrection, I would have went straight from the rally, straight to the Capitol and been burning it down or whatever I was going to do. But no, so I didn't think about it in the moment. It was more of a, preservation of people. And I think about like situations that, people are quick to pull out their phone and record stuff. Instead of doing that, like if a cop is, if cops hurting somebody and it's over the top and you can see that, then separate them, get in the middle of it, or be like, hey man, you need to chill out, even if that means losing your freedom. For me, that's what that means.
So if you were in Minneapolis when Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck, you would have intervened.
I think that would have been the wise, because if you say we got to get there together, we got to see the humanity, and that's a man on the ground who ended up dying. And that's a police officer supposed to be protecting and serving. There was nothing that guy was going to do on the ground. Once he had him in handcuffs, he wasn't going anywhere. So why do you need to kneel on his neck? You need to get off of him. And if it meant me going to jail to even to just tackle him or do whatever it was to get him off of him, then George Floyd might be alive. And that's what I think. We've got to see the humanity in each other. Whether George Floyd broke the law or not, we have to take that into consideration, that that's a human being, and what that guy is doing to him is dangerous. And we need to show some sacrificial love and get in there for that man,
How do you feel about what Trump is doing right now in office? Are you satisfied with the actions that he's taken? I mean, save for the fact that he pardoned you.
Right. No, I
know that.
Hey, I'm thankful. I'm so thankful for that, man. But I love. We were talking about this prior, but I love a disruptor of the status quo. I don't feel like us being $35 trillion in debt is a good thing. I didn't sign up for that anywhere. I'm sure you didn't sign up for that. For your children and grandchildren to be indebted over or something, sending billions and billions of dollars over to other countries that have nothing to do with us. And so I love the selections of like RFK getting confirmed today and just being somebody that's going to shake up the FDA and the CDC, and just take a look at some of these things that they're putting in our bodies, whether it's the foods or the vaccines or whatever it is. So even if I'm not saying do away with vaccines, but I'm saying let's take an honest look at it. If science proves out that it's healthy for you, then it's healthy. But I think it's good to try to break that status quo and change it up and do something different, because it hasn't been working. We're a really divided country, and I think that we can all get back together on common sense, narrow down a tight budget where we're not just wasting money and throwing it out the window, like we're going to print some more and inflate the value of money again. Like they're taking money out of the taxpayers, and they're supposed to be working for us in D.C., and they've been taking advantage of us, trying to tell us what to do and just doing whatever they want to do. So I do like what he's doing. You know, I have a lot of respect for Donald Trump. He did what he said he was going to do in regards to me letting me out of prison. Sometimes I wish he would shut up, but that's just his style. You know what I mean? I can't knock him for that, but I do appreciate him having a outside the box mentality, not being a career politician. So I know he's not everybody's flavor, and I can completely understand it. He gets on my nerves sometimes too. But
what do you think would happen if people who have opposing political views decided, you know what, they did it, we can do it, and they decided, okay, it's our turn to storm the Capitol because we didn't like the election results and we feel like our guy got robbed, our guy got cheated. Now we're going to go out and storm the Capitol. Would you be in support of that?
If I had an intentional plan to do so, you know, I would say then by all means handle your business, handle your scandal. But you know, I would say utilize your First Amendment right to protest, organize and plan protests and do all that. But I wouldn't say, you know, I don't believe that I believe that the entities that went with the intent of committing violence were either Antifa or counter protesters, or they were federal informants or federal agents or whatever. I believe the crowd was provoked and the police were provoked, because there's a lot of books on psychology of the crowd and mass movements of the crowd, the psychology of people. And I think that, you know, I interviewed, there was 3 people in the D.C. jail with me that were Antifa. And I don't know if you're familiar with Antifa, but they're the ones infiltrating these movements in Minneapolis, and they're the ones burning stuff down and making these things way worse than they need to be. It's not, these things aren't organic. You know, our country, our government specializes in color revolutions, going to these places and sowing discord and discontent and going and creating these movements that aren't even really organic. You know what I mean? And so, I sat down and spoke to a dude in the jail that said, he told me personally, I went with 18 Antifa members, and he showed me videos of him provoking the police. So these 18 people are over here provoking the police, throwing water bottles at them, cussing at them, calling them pigs and doing this, that, or the other. And then now what do you think the police are doing? They're getting mad, and so they think, well, these guys are Trump supporters too. So now they're going to take that anger out on the crowd, which not the whole crowd is not these same guys. So it just was a lot of sowing discord. So, I mean, I would say if you are unhappy with what your government's doing, exercise your voice. I would say, you know, because this is stuff that I wasn't aware of. Call your congressman, write letters. Go to the Capitol. You can make an appointment to sit down with your congressman or organize protests, but make sure it's peaceful. You know, I don't think, you know, like they say, violence is never the answer. I think you're going to get a lot further if you get 1 million people in D.C. on a peaceful protest or a march and a movement like that, and you're going to get people to support you and donate to you and fund you to do that. And I think you'll get a lot farther, but I wouldn't advise going and storming the Capitol. No, not at all.